I'm going to present my diving stories in no particular order, and maybe they'll be interspersed with some other things. But today I want to tell you about Old Goatley. Oh man, do I remember Old Goatley. Now, Old Goatley is a nickname we gave to this crotchety old retired guy. And any day of the week you could go to Gandy Bridge, and one bridge was just an old rickety bridge, and right next to it, within, I don't know, an easy 40, 50 feet away, there was a brand new bridge. Now, the brand new bridge had a long catwalk on it that went out maybe half a mile or a quarter of a mile. And the best fishing was real close to shore. And there was this guy who every day would be there with his fishing pole, and he was fishing for snook. Now, snook was one of the favorite fish that we liked to shoot. And by the way, it was the only fish in Florida at the time that you were not allowed to shoot. But we shot them anyway. There was a big fine, serious consequences if you ever got caught. And my dad was always warning me, don't shoot the snook, don't shoot the snook. However, he always ate them if we brought them home. And I'll tell you more about snook later. But I want to talk about Old Goatley today. Old Goatley liked to fish right in our favorite spot to dive for snook, right underneath the bridge. And so what we would do is we would dive into the water on the south side of the old bridge where he couldn't see us. And then we would swim with the current underwater with one breath. We would swim all the way until we would come up underneath the new bridge, again, where he couldn't see us, and we would be very quiet. And we would be diving down there, and we would sometimes shoot snook right underneath this guy's line. Sometimes we would dive under the water there, and we would see his fishing line in the water, and we would shoot snook that were looking at his fishing line. Because you see, snook are really smart. And the fishermen, they used to think that this was a big snook. But we would shoot snook that were 3 foot long. The biggest one I ever shot was 4 foot long. And sometimes you'd see these big monsters under the water right underneath his line. He couldn't see it because, remember, it was murky water diving. But we could swim right out there and shoot fish. Then we'd dart back underneath the bridge and come up for air underneath the bridge. Well, anytime Goatley saw us, he would yell at us, and he would curse at us and swear at us and tell us to get out of there and threaten to call the police, and he would rant and rave until finally we left, because he felt like our presence in the water interfered with his fishing. Actually, it didn't interfere with nothing. You can't scare the fish away. Anyway, anytime Goatley was out there, we knew we were going to have a bad day diving. Well, one day we were out there, and Gandy Bridge had lots of rocks up and down the seawall, and wharf rats lived in those rocks. Now, the wharf rats were like this big, not counting the tail, big-bodied, ratty-looking rats. And one day we were out there, and I found a dead wharf rat, and it was pretty freshly dead. I don't know what killed it or whatever, but it was still there. Rigor mortis had already set in, but just barely, and so it was still fresh. And so I picked that rat up. I went over to my motorcycle and got a pair of pliers out of my motorcycle. And my best friend, Ed DeBee, was with me. We both dove in the water. Let's have some fun. And we both dove into the water, and we swam underwater all the way over to the new part of the Gandy Bridge, came up underwater, and Goatley was there. And I thought, we're going to have some fun with this rat. We had already been diving, so we were ready to go anyway. We dove out there, and I had that rat in my hand, and I had the pliers in my other hand, and I found his fishing line, and I hooked this rat onto his fishing line, and then I grabbed the line with the pliers, and I started pulling and tugging and pulling and tugging and making the biggest fight you ever did see until I couldn't hold my breath any longer. And then I let go of the line and swam back, and Ed and I got out of the water, and we got up over the seawall onto the road, and we were running back to our motorcycles to take off for home. We got about halfway to our motorcycles when all of a sudden we hear this burst of swearing and cussing like you've never heard before, because old Goatley thought he had a big snook on the line, and he reeled that fish up, and it ended up being this rat, and he knew that it was us because well, I guess we were his arch enemies, and so he comes booking out after us, shaking his fist and cussing and swearing. But by then we were on our motorcycles cranking up and heading for the end of the parking lot. And that's the way I remember old Goatley. We had a number of times with him. Actually, I suppose he was just another nice guy fishing, but he didn't like us, and at the time we didn't like him because we were in his spot and he was in our spot, and the two just didn't mix.